Episode 14, Karl Benz's first gasoline engine and the emergence of Henry Ford. Despite business misfortunes, Benz strived to invent a new engine. And in 1878, he focused on obtaining new patents to increase revenue. Since he lacked the funds to hire employees, Benz's wife, Bertha, diligently assisted him in his engine research. Despite difficult financial circumstances, Benz continued searching for investors and carried on with his research, with the dedicated support of his wife, Bertha Ringer. He focused on developing a high-performance two-stroke engine, and on December 31, 1878, the day before the new year, he was able to operate a high-output two-stroke gas engine. This engine was patented in 1879. Soon, with Bertha's help and his own genius, Karl Benz made further groundbreaking inventions components designed to operate his high-output two-stroke gas engine. He obtained patents for a speed regulation system, a spark ignition method using a battery, a spark plug, a carburetor, a clutch, a gear shift, and a water radiator. After developing the gas engine with only Bertha's assistance, Benz took it a step further and began developing a gasoline engine using petroleum as fuel. Thus, Benz was achieving his goals one by one despite the hardships. Then, on the night of December 31, 1879, 1 year later, Benz finally made history. As a top expert in gas engines, Benz was researching an engine using the new fuel, petroleum. Due to the different ignition points of gas and petroleum, the research on the petroleum engine progressed slowly. By the end of 1879, Benz had theoretically created a perfect petroleum engine, yet, strangely, it would not start. Benz could not figure out why the engine refused to operate. Then, on the evening of December 31, 1879, after dinner, Bertha suddenly approached Benz and spoke to him. With firm conviction, she wanted Benz to try starting the engine immediately. However, Benz listened to Bertha's words without showing much reaction. He had already tried countless times, but the engine had never started. Yet, Bertha was persistent. Reluctantly, he went to the workshop at his wife's continued insistence. Hoping for a miracle, Benz bent down and forcefully turned the crank handle of the engine. Yet, even after several attempts, the engine still would not start. Thinking it was hopeless, Benz was about to stop. But Bertha looked at him with eyes that silently pleaded, "Just one more time." Seeing that loving gaze, Benz thought, "All right, I'll keep trying until my wife tells me to stop." Benz gripped the handle tightly and turned it with all his strength. Then, with a tick-tick-tick-tick sound, the engine roared to life. It was a miracle. Benz and Bertha stared at each other in shock before embracing in tears of joy. While both Daimler and Benz developed gasoline engines and automobiles around the same time, the prevailing view is that Benz's gasoline engine in 1879 established him as the creator of the first gasoline-powered engine and automobile. Due to the lack of available information from the time, when Benz was developing the gasoline engine, the content is quite limited. If you happen to have any details from that era, please feel free to share them in the comments. Thank you. On the late evening of December 31, 1879, as the first gasoline engine roared to life in Benz's workshop, people in Detroit, USA, were busy preparing for the New Year's celebration. At that time, Detroit had developed into an industrial city in the United States, lined with steam automobile factories, engine plants, and machinery factories. Among the factories in Detroit, there was a steam engine company called Dry Dock. Inside the factory's workshop, a cheap kerosene lamp dimly illuminated the dark interior, and a young boy was cleaning the factory after the engineers had finished their work. Ashes from the furnace, used to produce steam, were piled up on the floor, and oil used to operate the machines was smeared messily on the walls and machinery. The boy swept the ashes on the floor with a large broom and wiped the thick layers of oil off the walls and machines with a rag. Outside the factory, many people were loudly celebrating the approaching new year. But the boy breathed in the cold factory air as he continued cleaning the floors and machines alone. As he wiped the machines, the boy reminisced about the steam automobile he had seen with his father in Detroit back in 1876. "Ford, you might want to join the crowd and enjoy the grand festivities, but now is not the time. You barely managed to get a job at a company that builds the engines for the steam automobile you fell in love with. Now is the time to chase your dream. Even though you're just cleaning and running errands for engineers in this humble factory. Learn quickly and build your own car someday." This boy was none other than Henry Ford, the future founder of the Ford Motor Company. In the 100-year history of the automobile industry, more than 4,000 companies have emerged, producing an uncountable number of cars, yet only 3 models have ever sold over 10 million units. These 3 were the Volkswagen Beetle, the Toyota Corolla, and Ford's Model T. Ford was able to sell over 10 million cars because of his business philosophy. "I want everyone to be able to afford a car." While other automobile companies at the time focused on producing luxurious, high-priced cars with high profit margins, Ford developed affordable and durable cars for the common people. To match his goal of mass sales, he established a large-scale automobile production system, moving away from traditional manual manufacturing. This laid the foundation for modern industrial mass production, leaving a significant mark in automotive history. Ford played a major role in transforming automobiles from a luxury item for the wealthy into a necessity for the masses. Since the advent of automobiles in America, Ford has remained one of the most beloved figures among Americans. Henry Ford's unwavering consumer-centered philosophy continues to this day, serving as the driving force behind the Ford Motor Company's success. On July 30, 1863, Henry Ford was born as the eldest of 5 siblings on a farm, surrounded by forests, 10 miles west of Detroit, Michigan, in an area that would later become part of Dearborn. He was born to William Ford and Mary Liggott Ford, who was of Dutch descent. Henry Ford was 2 years younger than William Crapo Durant, with whom he would later have a fateful rivalry, and 12 years older than Alfred Pritchard Sloan, Jr. Henry Ford's father, William Ford, was an Irish immigrant who, like many others, fled to America in 1847 to escape the devastating potato famine. William Ford had immigrated in the 1830s, and with the help of 2 uncles who were prominent landowners in the Dearborn area, had established one of the largest and most prosperous farms in the region. By the time Henry Ford was born, as the eldest of 6 siblings, Henry Ford had to help with the family's farming work before even completing elementary school. But he did not enjoy farm work. Instead of farming, Henry Ford preferred tinkering with machines and tools. He was especially fascinated by clocks, and before turning 10, could already disassemble and reassemble a watch his father had given him as a gift. He also repaired broken clocks for his neighbors, earning the nickname "Clock Doctor" in his community. In 1876, when Henry Ford was 13, his mother suffered complications after a stillbirth and passed away at the age of 37. For Henry Ford, his mother, Mary Lickett Ford, was always a strong supporter and a pillar of emotional strength. Later, Henry Ford credited his success to the values his mother had instilled in him. Mary Lickett Ford taught Henry Ford the following lessons. The things you dislike the most require the greatest courage, patience, and self-discipline. There will be many times in life when you must do things you don't want to do. The work given to you may be difficult, unpleasant, or painful, but you must do it anyway. You can sympathize with others, but never pity yourself. When his mother, Mary Lickett Ford, passed away, young Henry Ford was deeply shocked and wanted to leave Dearborn. After his mother's passing, Henry Ford's father insisted that he become a farmer, which further strained their relationship. Henry spent much of his time in his room, taking apart and reassembling clocks to understand how they worked. Some time after his mother's death, he traveled to Detroit with his father, where he saw a steam-powered automobile for the first time. From that moment on, his mind became completely consumed with steam cars. At the age of 16, in 1879, Henry Ford secretly left home against his father's wishes and traveled to Detroit, a city filled with the noise of machine factories. After struggling for a year, he eventually secured a job at the Dry Docks Steam Engine Company. At that time, Ford's responsibilities were limited to running errands for engineers, assisting them, and cleaning. Despite earning a meager wage and living under difficult conditions, he endured it all to learn about engine technology. Even on the last day of 1879, Ford continued cleaning as usual, carefully observing the many machines around him to learn through observation. Later, Ford secured an apprenticeship at the James Flour Company in Detroit, where he learned mechanical craftsmanship. He studied engine-related journals to stay informed about advancements in engine technology, while waiting for his opportunity. In 1880 in France, Jacques and Pierre Curie made a significant discovery related to engines. Pierre Curie was also the husband of Marie Curie, who was the first to discover radioactive elements. What they discovered was the piezoelectric effect, which began to be used in various fields after its discovery. One of the important automotive components that utilizes the piezoelectric effect is the injector, a device that mixes fuel with air and injects it into the cylinder through a nozzle. This component, found in modern vehicles, plays a crucial role among the various parts that make up the fuel injection system. At the time of the discovery of the piezoelectric effect, it was not specifically used in the automotive field. But in the future, it would play a role as crucial as a pinch hitter, hitting a home run every time in the development and use of diesel engines. Early diesel engines used mechanical fuel injection systems. However, due to the lack of proper fuel injection technology, diesel engines suffered from incomplete combustion. When fuel undergoes incomplete combustion, it emits black smoke from the vehicle's exhaust, causing pollution, which led to stricter laws and regulations in many countries. As a solution to minimize incomplete combustion in diesel engines, electronic injection systems were later introduced. However, electronic systems alone could not completely resolve the issue of soot caused by incomplete combustion in diesel engines. The solution found was the piezo injector, which utilizes the piezoelectric effect to properly mix fuel and air. The principle of the piezo injector is that a crystal blocks the fuel passage of the injector, which is shaped like a fine needle. When electricity is applied to the crystal, its size changes, creating a gap between the passage and the crystal. When fuel is injected through this gap, it sprays out of the passage end like a mist. By adjusting the duration of the applied electricity, the amount and timing of fuel injection can be controlled. Since the crystal's response speed is extremely fast, piezo injectors provide fuel to the engine much more accurately than mechanical or solenoid-based injectors. As a result, diesel engines equipped with piezo injectors emit 15-20 less exhaust gas, reduce engine noise by about 3 dB, and improve fuel efficiency by up to 3 compared to conventional engines. Thus, diesel engines evolved into third-generation common-rail diesel engines, gaining recognition for their improved economic efficiency and environmental friendliness.